And a pleasant good afternoon to everyone out there in Irish Breakdown land. I am Vince D'Addario. I am
Vince has had a little bit too much sugar today.
Or not enough. I'm not sure which. But welcome to another edition of the Irish Breakdown podcast. I'm Vince D'Addario. I'm the football analyst. That guy right there, that's Brian Driscoll. He's the publisher. And we are basically going to do a similar show to yesterday, but we're flipping sides of the football. We are going to preview Oklahoma State's defense. And yesterday we talked about the fact that, this matchup is strength versus question mark, right? And we talked about a question mark. We talked about Oklahoma State's question mark, and that was their offense. We're flipping the script. And today we're talking the defense, and this is their known commodity. This is their strength by far. It's not close. Their defense. And again, people who have not watched Oklahoma State or don't know much about Oklahoma State might be surprised that the defense is the strength of this team. And
that's not what we're used to seeing from Oklahoma State or a Big 12 team.
Or Big 12.
They look more like a Big 10 team stereotypically than what you would expect from a Big 12 team.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's crazy, but that's where we are.
And it's not just about defense. It's about why they're good on defense. Yeah. It's about this is a well-coached football team in every facet of the game. Just a sound, well-coached, disciplined, hard-nosed football team.
Yeah.
That's not super talented, but really good as a team. And they're fun to watch. They really are. Like, sometimes you break down an opponent and you're like, they're talented. Like, this is the polar opposite of breaking down USC, right? Yeah. Where you're like, some talent there, but man, these guys just don't know how to play football.
They're just flying all over the place. I have no idea what they're doing.
This team's like, there is a purpose to everything that they do, and it is no more true anywhere else but defense.
And it's similar though to what we talked about with the offensive line, though. You know what I mean? Like,
they're a little bit more talented, but yes.
Granted, yes. Yeah, absolutely. But they're a group that works together really, really well. There's not really an alpha that's going to, shot. There's no Kyle Hamilton, right? But they work really well as a group. And that's what scares me isn't the right word, but that's what concerns me, when you break down this defense versus Notre Dame's front. I mean, it's going to be it's going to be a battle. There's no question about it. And Oklahoma State can make things difficult for Notre Dame offensively.
And Vince, when you look at their season, I'm breaking down their defense, and you look at their season, there's really no games or stretch where you're like, wow, they were just so brilliant during that stretch. And that's why their stats are so good. I mean, you look at this is their points allowed: 16, 23, 20, 20, 14, 24, 24, 3, 3, 17, 0, 33, 21. And then if you look at the 33, Oklahoma had a recovered fumble in the end zone and a safety. So they only gave up 24 points. So the point is, there's not like a stretch. They had, back-to-back points of 3 games and then a 0, but there's a lot of 14 to 20s. But they never gave up more than 24 points. So, like, they're not this lockdown, like, teams don't even come close to scoring kind of team, really. They had about a 2-week stretch of that. But it's just been about just consistently all season, whereas Notre Dame's numbers are somewhat similar. Oklahoma State's 7th in scoring defense. Notre Dame is 9th. Oklahoma State's 2nd in efficiency. Notre Dame is like 8th. The difference is Notre Dame has had some stretches where they were just absolutely dominant on defense. And then some stretches where you're like, like there's no North Carolina or Florida State really on Oklahoma State's docket. It's just been steady, good football all season. Now, the big question mark is, will that continue now that Jim Knowles is no longer there? That was their defensive coordinator. He was the architect of that defense.
That's the big unknown.
He left to go to Ohio State. And then, they can say, like, okay, look, he's gone, but, it's going to be the same Not really. You can say that, but not really. Like when Mike Elko left, You could say that about Notre Dame because Clark Lee knew Mike Elko's defense. He had been in it, like he had run it. This is a situation where this guy's been there 3-4 years, but I don't know if there's like this clear line of succession that maybe there was in some other instances. So that's just my outsider look. I may be completely wrong on that. They may have guys that are just perfectly capable of running the same defense.
Sure.
Jim Knowles is a really good football coach. There's a reason Ohio State hired him. And I can't help but think it's going to be a bit of a loss for them, but I imagine they're going to do everything possible to just kind of keep this thing rolling.
Yeah, I think that'll be the goal, obviously. I mean, and when you lose the head of the strength of your team, right? That's huge. I mean, that is if Marcus Freeman got pulled away from Notre Dame and Brian Kelly was still the head coach, and let's say whatever, Marcus Freeman's now the head coach at Cincinnati, okay, and he leaves Notre Dame. We're having some serious discussion about what this defense is going to look like sans Marcus Freeman, right? I mean, look, we all have a lot of faith in Elston and the rest of the staff, of course, but it's not Marcus Freeman, and this is Marcus Freeman's defense, right? And so we would be having a discussion about, man, what is this defense going to look like going into the bowl game without Marcus Freeman heading the charge, right? So this is a big deal. I mean, we often hear people talking in the chat about, oh, well, Oklahoma State's not losing any players, for this and this, that, and the other, but they lost their coach. Like that's a massive loss in my opinion. Right. Okay. Now it could be these guys are fired up and they want to play better, and it could be all of that, of course, but it could be the opposite as well, or anywhere in between. So it's a legit question that we have to ask about this defense.
And how we break this down is going to be that they're just going to keep rolling. Yeah. I mean, so there's no way in my breakdown that I can show, well, they're going to bring this blitz now that Jim Knowles isn't there, whereas before they'd brought this blitz. I have no knowledge, no way of evaluating that.
They may not even know that right now.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And so, well, I mean, I'm assuming they do, but what I'm saying is there's no film of it. They're a week into practice. They know what they're going to do, but there's no film that I can evaluate to say this is what this coach likes to do but Jim Knowles would have done it this way.
Right.
So we're just going to move forward with the thought of this is who they are, and this is what's made them so good, and that's just who they are. And so that's just how it's going to be. And we start off, we'll dive into the stats, and it's going to give you an idea of just how good this defense has been this year.
No question. I'm looking forward to having this discussion because this is a good team to talk about. Look, there were shows that we skipped down the stretch because it just wasn't any fun to talk about the side of the ball that Notre Dame was going to face, things like that, right? I mean, it just is what it is. But this is a fun side of the ball to talk about in this game because it's a solid football team. It's a solid side of the ball, and that's fun. I'm really looking forward to this because it's fun to talk about good football. It's hard to scratch out information about a team that's not very good. Yeah. But this team is good. Like this side of the ball is really good. And so I'm really looking forward to talking.
So let's dive into it for sure.
So we want to dive into the stats. We did this yesterday. We threw up the stats just like we're doing right here. And notice oh my goodness.
There's a lot of single digits in that breakdown.
So this is the first time that I've seen them. The number
I didn't show these to Vince on purpose because I wanted to see his reaction when you pop these stats.
So obviously we have Big 12 ranking and then we have NCAA ranking, right? So not difficult to be at the top of the Big 12 defensive rankings. I
am going to argue with you a bit on that because this year in the Big 12 was a little bit different. It was a different animal in the Big 12 this year. If you look at the Big 12, the best teams in the league this year, for the most part, with the exception of Oklahoma, played really good defense.
Okay.
I mean, if you look at like Baylor, for example, Baylor won this year with defense. I mean, they weren't winning because of offense.
It was a very evenly matched Big 12 championship.
You had 3 Big 12 teams ranked in the top 21 nationally in scoring defense this year. I can't tell you the last time that's happened because you had Oklahoma State at 8. You had Baylor at 14. They gave up only 19.2 points per game. And then Iowa State only gave up 20.6. So you have 3 teams in the Big 12 that ranked in the top 21 in scoring defense. Now, there's a bit of a drop off after that, but the two teams that played in the championship, for example, for the Big 12, both finished in the top 15 in scoring defense.
Right.
That's not – the SEC can't say that because Alabama didn't finish in the top 15 in scoring defense. I don't believe the Big Ten could say that because Michigan was 4th and Iowa was 14th. But I don't believe any other conference can say that they're the teams that played for the conference championship finished in the top 15. The ACC, neither one of their teams that played for it were in the top 15. The Pac-12, they didn't have a single team in the top 15. So this was a different version of the Big 12, in my opinion. And that matters because that has to be factored in. Part of that is the offenses weren't as good this year in the Big 12. If we're going to be honest, this wasn't a vintage Oklahoma offense. It wasn't.
Right.
Oklahoma State's offense wasn't a vintage Oklahoma State offense. It was a very strange year in the Big 12.
Agreed.
But the point being, these are good numbers when you look at the context of what this league was, or at least that the top two teams were in the league. Now, after you get past Baylor and Oklahoma State, it starts looking more and more.
Yeah.
I think West Virginia was a solid defense. Iowa State was pretty good defense, but there's also some bad defenses in the Big 12. No, but it's getting better.
Yeah.
It's getting better.
But then you move one column over, and then it starts to really define itself, right? So with everything that you said about the Big 12, I totally understand where you're coming from, but it's the NCAA marks that are the most impressive on this, right? Because, I mean, look at the left side of this bracket, right? So you've got 7, 3, 4, 5, 4, 1, 2, right? That's a lot of single-digit across the country rankings, which, I mean, say what you want to about the Big 12, those are still pretty impressive.
Yes.
Right? I mean,
you're a Power 5 team that ranks in the top 10 to 15 in that many defensive categories.
Exactly.
You're an elite defense.
Right. Yep. And no question about it. So it's going to be very interesting with this. So let's go through some of these. So they're only giving up less than 17 points a game. And we've talked about this a lot. Notre Dame is going to need to score in order to win this game, right? I mean, it's a postseason game. You're
going to need to get into the 20s for sure.
Absolutely, for sure. Absolutely. That's a must. So, yeah, that one again. I don't want to use the word worry, but this is the good side of Oklahoma State, right? So Notre Dame has to score. There's some pressure on the offense where they're gonna have to score. It can't be what Notre Dame has adopted in the past, where it's, hey, man, defense is going to keep us in it. You know, let's hope we can keep them down from scoring, et cetera. And then the offense is just kind of there. Like, the offense is going to need to score some points here. They're going to have to be efficient. Let's put it that way.
They're most likely going to have to get into the 20s. Now, I think that there's a chance, because that Notre Dame could win a game that looks a lot like the Big 12 title game.
Right.
But like, I don't see them winning with 13, 17 points. I think they're going to have to get into the 20s. The interesting thing when I look at this, Vince, is Notre Dame's defense held opponents to fewer than 17 points 2 more times than Oklahoma State did. Notre Dame held 7 opponents to less than 17 points. Oklahoma State only held 5. And I think that tells me 2 things. Number one, it tells me that when Notre Dame's defense was really, really good this year, it was really, really good this year.
Yeah.
The other thing it tells me is that Oklahoma State has been a far more steady defense, and so they're not a knock you out, completely shut you down team. They're just you're just not going to be able to score on us. And what makes it even more impressive, these numbers more impressive, Vince, they have a terrible red zone defense. And they rank 94th in red zone defense.
Terrible.
And yet they rank in the top 10 in scoring defense, which means teams just aren't even knocking on the door. I mean, that's a big part of this, because when you look at the heart and soul of the Oklahoma State defense, there's 2 numbers that don't make sense when you look at how good they are.
I've got my 2 in my head, so I want to see what
they don't turn the ball they don't force a lot of turnovers, and they're not a great red zone defense.
Right. Exactly.
And
that's absolutely right.
When you see those 2 things, you think, like, if I were to just tell you this team is 50th in turnovers forced, and they're 94th in red zone defense, you're going to come to some conclusions about that, right? And then you could say, well, it's maybe like, remember last year with Clark Lee's defense, Notre Dame was like super low in red zone defense, but they ranked really high in red zone touchdown defense, like they were 23rd.
It's just they buckled
Oklahoma,
yeah.
Right. Oklahoma State's not a top 30 team in red zone touchdown defense. Now they're better at not giving up touchdowns.
Right.
But if you get into the red zone, you got a pretty good chance of scoring against Oklahoma State. So for them to be that good in scoring defense, it tells me they're just not letting you get there. But it's not because they're forcing a bunch of turnovers. It's just they just make stops. And the reason it comes down to is the two stats that are most important are this one right here, tackles for loss. They led the nation with 113 tackles for loss. And then you get down over here, part of that is sacks.
Yep.
Now, Notre Dame this year had a very good defense when it came to getting sacks. Right? Notre Dame was I believe finished in the top 10 this year in sacks. Yes, Notre Dame finished 9th in sacks with 40. Oklahoma State had 14 more sacks than Notre Dame, which is a really impressive number. But here's something else about Notre Dame. Notre Dame finished 55th in tackles for loss. They had that means they had 77 tackles for loss. That means they had 37 non-sack tackles for loss. If you look at Oklahoma State, however, they had 54 sacks, which led the nation, but they had 113 tackles for loss. That means they had 50, if my math is correct, they had 59 run game tackles for loss, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
That's a really good number.
Right.
Like that's when you're getting even more run stops and you have sacks and you're really good at getting sacks, you are an incredibly disruptive defense.
Right.
We saw that in the Big 12 title game where Baylor was when Baylor had their biggest struggles and when they got in 2nd and 2, 3rd and 2, 4th and 1, they were losing yards every time. Because when you look at this defense, it's a very disruptive defense. Now, here's what I love about it. And here's what ultimately makes it so good. They are disruptive, they are aggressive, but they are very sound. And that's, to me, what makes this defense so good. And we'll dive into that here in a second. But, Vince, they're great against the run. They're great against the pass. They're disruptive. And that they just don't give up points. So the Notre Dame offense certainly is going to have to be on top of their game and be very efficient. And, Notre Dame hasn't been a great third down offense this year. Notre Dame's been a great big play offense this year. Well, you know what Oklahoma State doesn't do? They don't give up a lot of big plays.
Yeah. Yep.
So it is definitely going to be they're strong where you're not, and which makes this an even bigger test, which we're going to talk about Notre Dame just for a second here, Vince. And then we'll dive back to Oklahoma State. That's why this is the point I was making the other day when we were doing the preview show. This is why I love this matchup so much better than the other matchups, Michigan State, Pitt, teams like that, because you're actually going to get a real test of where Tommy Rees has brought this offense or not in this game. Because if Notre Dame comes out and moves the ball and scores points against this defense, the way that they've played all year, it tells you that their success in the second half of the year wasn't just because they played bad teams. That's the concern, right? Like, well, yeah, they did better because they played a bunch of bad teams. If Notre Dame comes out in this game and they move the ball and they put 27 to – because keep in mind, you scored 27 to 34 points in this game, that's a really good performance against this defense.
Right.
And if they go beyond that, then holy moly, that's a heck of a performance. I'm not anticipating that. But what I'm saying is I'm trying to give context. 27 to 34 points in this game is an outstanding performance. And if you were able to score 27 points against the best defenses you played this year, Notre Dame is 12-0, and we're talking about their upcoming matchup against Georgia in the semifinals.
No, absolutely.
Right? Yep. Because that's what was needed against Cincinnati. If you just scored 27 points, you beat Cincinnati, right? Defense gave you a chance. So they're going to have to get there. And if they're able to get there against this defense, because I'm going to argue this is not the most talented defense that Notre Dame has faced all year. Cincinnati's is, and Wisconsin has more talent. This is the best defense that Notre Dame has faced all year, in my opinion.
I agree. And Notre Dame is going to have to be, again, I don't want to dive too far into this, but they're going to have to be balanced, number one, and they're going to have to, you're not going to be able to do the same type of thing over and over again. You've got to be creative. You've got to move the ball around. Mm-hmm. You've got to run the ball with consistency. You've got to throw the ball with consistency. And I'm not saying which one comes first, but I'm saying you've got to do both. And because you can't just try one thing, like load up on the run game or load up on the pass game. You're not going to be able to do one or the other. You've got to be able to do both because you have to keep this Oklahoma State team honest.
Right.
You have to.
Yeah. And we'll have sort of
right.
how Notre Dame is attacking them kind of thing. But yeah, this is a really
That's
really
what's
good.
Exciting about it, though, isn't it? Though I mean, because we're going to see, like you said, we're going to see where Tommy Rees is as an offensive coordinator because he's putting the game plan together. Like this is the Tommy Rees show, and even if they're not different formationally and schematically, all that, whatever, right? But it's play calling, it's how aggressive you're going to be, all of those different things. You're going to be tested against this defense, and that is really where we're going to see where Tommy Rees is at this point. And that's the exciting part to me.
So you ready to talk? You ready to dive into the particulars of this Oklahoma State defense, Vince?
Absolutely, because this is a I don't want to say mirror image of Notre Dame because they're not, but there's a lot of similarities between the two, I think. And so, yeah, let's dive into this because it's going to be fun. We're going to teach some people some stuff here, I think.
Well, I hope so. I hope I don't embarrass myself too much here with this breakdown. But I want to just kind of draw up and first show just a basic look of what Oklahoma State does. And I took a screenshot of the Big 12 title game because I want to be able to move some stuff around and show people some things. So this is an example of when Vince says it's a 4-2-5 defense. And we're going to get into this is an example of something Baylor did differently in the second game compared to the first game. In the first game against Oklahoma State, they came out, had a lot of two tight ends, a lot of condensed formations, a lot of things like that. In the second game, they spread Oklahoma State out, and that's when they found some success, is when they spread Oklahoma State out more. But you see here, you see the 4 down linemen right here, right? You see 2 linebackers and then 3 safeties and then 2 corners. One of the things I like about them is one thing that's different. They don't do as much of the vast differences that Notre Dame does when it comes to how they line up, right? Like they're not going to look like a 3-3-5 one snap.
Right.
They'll do some of that. Like they had some odd fronts against Baylor, but
this is more Notre Dame of
Notre
last
Dame
year,
right?
Of like 2019,
much more. That's a great point.
Yeah.
He's more similar to Clark Lee than he is to Marcus Freeman. Now, one thing I like about him where he is similar to Marcus Freeman is what happens post snap. So pre-snap, very similar to Clark Lee. Post-snap, very similar to Marcus Freeman and Jim Knowles have sort of come from the same school of thought to a degree, right? And what I mean by that is they are going to bring people from all over the field. And that's one of the things that Baylor was able to have success with in the first half is Baylor kind of spread them out and made it a little bit more difficult for them to bring pressures. And what I mean by that is you look at the structure of their defense. Now, what I like about what Oklahoma State does is when you look at their 3 safety defense, okay, they're going to do a couple different things out of that. Number one is they will bring these linebackers here. They'll bring this guy here, the Mike, they'll bring him inside and walk this guy down more in the alley, which is a lot like Notre Dame's 4-2-5.
Yep,
but they do a lot of this stuff. Yeah, but they do a lot of this sort of like this 3 deep look, Vince. And what they do out of that is they're going to rob one of these guys. Now, rob is basically just insert. They're going to insert a guy into the box. He's going to come downhill. Okay, so one of these safeties, and they'll mix up who that is. It's not always this guy right here. Like, based on this alignment, it looks like, oh, that guy's just going to come down, right? And I believe on this particular snap he did. But from that, they will drop this guy into coverage and bring him down. They'll bring him down and roll him back, and then they'll do a lot of different things. And that has really helped them this year be really good against the run because they can insert a lot of different players. Their corners down here, they're off in this instance. They'll also do a lot. They'll come up and press a lot, especially into the boundary. Now, this is a middle of the field snap. So they're at times in the middle of the field or to the field, if it's into the boundary, they'll back off a little bit. But here, out of spread looks, they'll play off coverage and just try to drive on quick routes. But they will come up and press a lot in this game. Go ahead, Vince.
I was going to say this look right here, this pre-snap look, they're daring you to run the football. They want you to run the football because they're going to
baiting
like you said. Yes, that's exactly right.
Baiting you.
They're baiting the offense to run because if you're looking at this and you're an offensive coordinator, you're like, I got numbers. Like I want to run.
You say, hey, there's 6 guys in the box, and 2 of them aren't even really. But the way these two safeties are, they will insert aggressively into that box. They go from a 6-man box to an 8-man box like that.
Exactly. Yes, it'll turn into a 4-3 defense real fast.
Right.
And then you don't have numbers anymore, and Oklahoma State has the advantage. And so that's what they want you to do. Because, again, you look at this and you're like, I get 3 yards out of this, no problem. And if you can average 3 yards a carry, on a consistent basis, you're like, okay, let's go. And then you'll pop one here and there. So, but yeah, that's exactly what they want to do. They want you to run the ball out of this look.
And that's but the thing about it is you look up front, they're really over here. They're a really sound but aggressive team, and we'll get into that as to how that makes some pressures. But from this, what I like, again, structurally, they will insert any of these 3 safeties. They will bring these corners down and squat them down and roll a guy over top. Their corners are really good run defenders, really good at block destruction.
That's the word right there, block destruction, because I saw on more than one occasion where the offensive team had numbers on the outside. And what I mean by that is they had a blocker for a defender, and then the ball carrier, there was nobody to, if everything is blocked correctly, there's nobody to tackle the ball carrier, right? So that's when on like an RPO, for example, you throw the ball out to the bubble screen because you've got numbers, and that's what the quarterback is reading pre-snap. Well, Oklahoma State doesn't put extra guys outside because they don't need to.
Right.
Because the corners are so good at busting through block destruction, busting through those wide receiver blocks and negating those bubble screens. And so the pre-snap is a lot of times it's going to be to throw to the outside, but they're so good at block destruction and then open field tackling that you're not going to be able to do that a whole lot, and you're going to have to figure out a different way to get the ball to the perimeter.
What that also does, Vince, is because when they play their corners aggressively, and in this particular snap they're not, but they will do a lot of press and corners. What that then does is that allows them to condense their safeties even more, and that's partly why they're so good against the run. But this is sort of the basic structure. Now there will be times to see this guy right here. This is their sort of what their version of their weak side end.
The Viper
tends to be a boundary player more often than not. They will drop him into coverage and bring this guy a lot more. And we don't have the ability, obviously, to draw. Actually, let me see if I can mark. Yeah, let's have some fun. Okay, so what they'll do at times is they will bring this guy right here, right? They'll bring him. And then they'll drop. So I'm gonna have a little bit of fun today, and then they'll drop this guy into coverage. Right? They'll do that with this guy. Okay, so they'll drop this guy into coverage, and then insert the linebacker here. They'll do different things like that. Other times they will bring both of these guys. Right? So they'll bring both of these guys, and then they'll bring safeties down here. They'll bring the safeties down into the box there just to protect. But they get away with it because they have a lot of faith in their corners to win one-on-ones. And we'll get into that as we get into the matchups. That's an area where I think Notre Dame can exploit them, and they put a lot of faith in their safeties to be able to cover tight ends. We'll talk about that as well. But they do a lot of different things where they mix up their looks. The other thing I like is they will bring this guy will come. This guy will come. This guy will come. This guy will come, and this guy. I mean, I'm serious. When it comes to their blitz package, you have to be this guy won't come from this alignment. He won't, but he will come from this alignment. This guy will come from this alignment, and then these two will come, and the corner will come. They're going to bring a different guy. Now, the other thing I like is they don't bring a lot of 6-man pressures, Vince, at least from what I saw.
Right.
They bring a lot of 5-man pressures.
Yep. And they get a lot of pressure with their front four. I mean, they just do. Right. Those guys do a really good job of bringing pressure with just 4 guys. And it's like, I'm trying to figure out a good way to describe this, but it's like team pressure. They just bring it and they just anaconda.
Much more so on third down when they're at their best on that. On early downs, they do a really nice job of 5-man pressures because it's more of it's a combination of run stunts plus pressures. But that's a reason why. And here's what comes down to me. They do a great job, in my opinion, of finding holes in your protection.
Correct.
right? And here's a perfect example. This is a 5-man pressure by Oklahoma State, okay? Now, they're in a situation where one of two things is going to happen for them, and they're both advantages for the defense, okay? Number one is Baylor is going to slide their protection to the field. So Baylor, is, from what film I've seen, that's just what they do. What that means is slide their protection is meaning they're all going to step towards the field.
Everybody goes left, yep.
And the back is going to step to the boundary and pick up the inside backer to edge player, okay? So what Baylor is going to do is the tackle, it will block the defensive end, but he's got to protect because they're sliding, he's got to protect his inside gap first. So what Baylor does is, even though they only bring 5 guys, so on this play, they bring the 4 down and they bring this backside linebacker, okay? So the defensive tackle here, the nose tackle, this is called an underfront, okay? Underfront means the nose is to the strength. In this instance, there's no tight end, so the strength is the field. And they see, to me, Vince, and I could be wrong on this, this is something that I would not take to my grave. This isn't something that I would advocate for at a clinic. But from what I can tell, the film I've watched, they seem to be a field boundary team when it comes to setting their fronts. Okay,
yeah,
so
I agree.
What that means is this is the field, right? So this is they're on the near hash. Okay, yep. So this is the boundary. This is the short side. This is called the field. So they're going to set their underfront to the field. Okay, now that means that the nose is going to be to the field. The 3 technique is away, and the Viper. Now this is exactly how Notre Dame sets their fronts. Okay, this looks a lot like a Notre Dame 4 down front. Okay, now what they do a great job of is they're in the shotgun, and you see the corners pressed here, right? This is what I talked about earlier. This is the nickel. Actually, there's another guy down below. So what they do is they know that Baylor is a heavy slide to the field, back to the weak side protection. So what they do is this nose tackle is going to attack the A gap the strong side A gap real aggressively. Okay. Now this defense 3 technique and this inside linebacker are going to attack the weak side A and B gaps. Okay. Now the linebacker comes from distance. He crashes this thing hard right before the snap. So what that does is that now puts the center has to protect because they're stepping to their left. Okay. This guard and center will have to work together, but that center's going to have to step to his left to take that hard A gap crash from the nose tackle. Because the linebacker crashes the A gap, the right guard now must protect his inside gap, because if you're sliding left, you have to protect your inside gap first. And so then he attacks the B gap and he runs right to the inside shoulder of the tackle, right? This guy does. Well, that leaves this is Colin Oliver, their best pass rusher at 10.5 over 10 sacks this year, matched up against a back, or there's a free runner if they do a free release.
Right.
Both of those are pluses for the quarterback, for the defense. A running back is not blocking Colin Oliver for very long, if at all. Okay.
No.
Number 2, if you're in a free release, this kid is twitchy. This is an explosive athlete. He's 6'2", 225. He flies off the edge. In this particular play, they did a free release, and he was on the quarterback before he got to the top of his 3-step drop. This is and because you're only bringing 5, you got 6 guys in coverage. So you've got a free runner. So even though Baylor, even with the free release, Baylor has 5 guys to block 5 guys. But Oklahoma State did a great job in this game of finding weaknesses in Baylor's protection that they could exploit, so they didn't have to use numbers to overwhelm the front. If you can find those weaknesses, and every team has them, sometimes you need a great player to exploit it. And at times, Oklahoma State doesn't have that, but they have really good individual pass rushers inside as well. And they have a kid they bring off the bench, Jernigan, who's a really quick, undersized, real good pass rusher who had a huge hit on Gary Bohannon in this game. Gary Bohannon, the quarterback for Baylor, got smacked a lot in this game.
Yes, he did.
But so it's a really sound attack. And so this one I'm talking about, like there's no gap. So the other thing about this is because you have a linebacker here that can fill the gap, because you have this nickel here and this guy out here, if they run the ball, okay, so let's go down here. If they run the ball, I'm going to add a little bit more to it. They're still sound because this guy can fill here.
Right.
This end can go here, right? So this end can come here. So they got that outside C gap contained. Plus you've got You've got the nickel here. Come on now. You got the nickel here, and then this safety is outside leveraged. He can fill the alley as well. So, and then this safety from back here he's got cutback. So he's going to be coming here protecting cutback. So even though they're bringing a pressure here, if Baylor runs the football, they're still gap sound. And that's what makes this team so dangerous. Now, to pull this off, you have to have some good players. And they do. They don't have great players. They don't have like anyone that's about to be a 2022 first-round draft pick. Colin Oliver's a kid I'm looking forward to seeing for the next 2 years.
Yeah.
But like right now, these are just good football players. They're not elite football players, but they're all pretty good. And that's what makes them effective. But it's also really sound. And they got really rangy run-supporting safeties. Their safeties are really good against the run. And ultimately, Vince, that's the key to this whole thing. If they don't have really good run-defending safeties, none of this other stuff matters, because if Baylor hands off here in an outside zone or a play where they're able – because here's the thing. If you're running zone, it's going to be a lot easier to get this sealed inside and get up, and this guy's blocking himself. These guys are done, right? These guys are out of it. If you're running outside zone or mid zone or inside zone away, those guys are out of the play. You're now worried about out here. If they don't have good run supporting defensive backs, then this is a big play potentially if you can catch them in it.
Yep.
So that to me is the ability of their perimeter players to play the run is at the end of the day one of the best parts about what this team does. Now, I think Notre Dame has some things they can do to exploit that, but from what we've seen so far and the teams they've played, this has been a pretty good – this is what makes them really good. Again, they are not a dominant defense. They're not. That's the thing I like about it. They're not dominant. They're not like, oh, my gosh, you're just going to get stuffed and have 180 yards of total offense and score 3 points. It's not that. It's just they're going to make you methodically go down the field.
They're going to make you earn everything you get.
And eventually they're going to get a tackle for loss. They're going to get a sack. They're going to force an incompletion. They're going to do something that keeps you from scoring.
Right.
Now, I think they can be exploited in some big play stuff, and we'll dive into this down the road. But the big thing is, for me, the weakness of this unit, and Baylor was able to exploit it to a certain degree early, is this guy and this guy right here. They're not great, in my opinion, pass coverage. They're not bad, but they're not great. They're not great when you're going up against a Michael Mayer, a George Takis, that kind of guy.
Right.
And so that's where Notre Dame is going to have to be successful. And I think their corners are good, but I don't think their corners are cover Kevin Austin for 60 minutes good.
Right.
I think there's some big play opportunities there. And that's the thing is if Tommy Rees can get a sense on when they do certain things. So like they'll line up here in this look right here, right? And what they'll do is let me get back to this without the marking up. So they'll get to this right here. This guy will be back a little bit more, and they'll kind of show a cover 2 look, right? Cover 2 is 5 guys playing a zone underneath, and then 2 guys playing like a deep half of the field. Well, in cover 2, if Kevin Austin runs a vertical route, this guy is going to go back here. A lot of times out of this, however, they don't actually play a ton of cover 2. They show a lot of cover 2. What they end up doing is, as we said earlier, one of these safeties is going to insert in down, even against the pass, to where they're trying to take away the short to intermediate stuff. They're willing to leave themselves potentially in some one-on-one matchups that aren't advantageous down the field because they don't think you're going to have enough time to get the ball off.
They're counting on their front 7 to give a lot of pressure.
So what happens is in Baylor beat them on this early in this game is they will roll this guy to the middle of the field, which if you can catch them back here, now you all of a sudden you have a one-on-one. If this guy's got to turn his hips to get to the middle, he's not going to stop, flip his hips, and then come back and help you outside.
Because he's not Kyle Hamilton. I mean,
and Kyle Hamilton can't do that.
But that's the point I was making earlier is that they don't I mean, you're absolutely right. That's impossible for anybody to do. But they don't have, a guy like that can cover like that on the back end. That's the point I was making. Yeah,
he's dropping to the middle of the field, protecting against the trip side.
Right.
He's protecting against any kind of seam. So he'd be protecting if this is Michael Mayer and Mayer's running a backside seam. He's coming to the middle to protect against that.
Correct.
To protect against this seam route, because they're basically saying, "Hey, buddy, you're on your own out there. You're on an island out there."
Yeah, the one-on-ones.
That's going to be the key. Yeah.
The one-on-one matchups, the 50-50s, those are the things that I think can be advantageous to Notre Dame. Big time, to be honest.
I'll say this. We've talked about Kevin Austin, and we'll dive more into this in the future matchups article, but we've talked about Kevin Austin's thinking about coming out. Okay. If Kevin Austin decides to go pro, it's because he dominates this matchup and has a big game.
Double-edged sword, baby.
No, I mean, but hey, you know what? It's fine. I'll take it, right?
I know.
That's the thing is, and if he doesn't dominate this matchup, then he's going to probably need to come back because that's going to be a key to this game because Baylor's banking on the fact that your dude is not better than this dude, number one. And number two, your quarterback's not going to have enough time to get rid of the ball.
Right.
And ultimately, that's kind of what they're banking on. And the thing I like about their defense, Vince, is their run game and their pass game goes well together. And at the end of the day, to me, that's the difference between a great D coordinator and a guy that's not. And when I was a coach, those are the guys that always had me the most concerned is when their defense was built towards stopping the run, but they built what happened behind it in a way that they were also able to protect against the pass. And Oklahoma State does that to a degree, but you can't do both equally with the same amount of schematic attention. At some point in time, you've got to rely on my guys have to go make plays.
Yeah.
Some teams choose to let their front four do that against the run. Other teams choose to let their secondary have to protect themselves on the back end. Notre Dame is one of those teams like Oklahoma State that says, hey, we're going to focus our attention schematically on stopping the run. And we need the corners and we need the safeties to be able to make plays. Oklahoma State does the same thing. And that's where if you're going to have success, it's going to be finding a few ways to make those kind of plays down the field. Oklahoma was able to do a little bit of that, which allowed them to get some big plays. But even then, no one has been able to consistently do that on this Oklahoma State defense this year.
Right.
And ultimately, that's what's made them so good. That's why they are, in my opinion, one of the better defenses in the country this year. They're clearly one of the 5 to 10 best defenses in the country. Not one of the 5 most talented, but one of the 5 best.
Well, and that's why you earn everything that you get against these guys. I mean, because you're right. I would be not overly surprised if Notre Dame gets a big play against these guys because I think that they can, and we'll talk about that moving forward. But I think the sustained drives are what are going to be the most rewarding in this game. Because if you can sustain a drive against these guys, then you've earned it. Like you have earned whatever points you get out of it. And look, Jonathan Dorr may be a big part of this game, right? I mean, they may have to kick some field goals. But if you can earn a double-digit play drive against this defense, you're doing something. And that's huge going into this game. And that's, again, we talk about things we're going to keep an eye on. That's one of the things. Like, can you sustain, your game plan better not be to big play these guys. Because, yes, I like the matchups in Notre Dame's favor sometimes on the outside. I do. But that can't be your game plan. Your game plan is going to have to be
you have to find a way to move the chains, and then that creates more opportunities for the big plays.
Right, exactly.
That's how I see it. Yeah. Now, I think Notre Dame can score on them. I don't think Notre Dame is going to be one of the 3 or 4 best offenses they've played all year.
Yes.
That's just a fact.
Yes.
Even without Kyron Williams, this is one of the 3 to 4 best offenses they've played this year. And as I've pointed out, they've given up over 20 points in a game several times this year. And, that's something you have to get. They're not, as I said, they're not a team that's just going to keep everybody to 17 or less. I mean, they are just consistently really, really good. And that's ultimately going to be, in my opinion, the key to this game. They're it's going
to be fun to watch.
I'm trying. I just feel like Notre Dame can score. That's my thing. Notre Dame can score on this team. And, the interesting thing is I'm doing it. Oklahoma State's given up over 20 points per game more times than Notre Dame has this year on defense. They've given, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. They've allowed at least 20 points per game 7 times. Notre Dame did it 5 times. I mean, so you can score on them to a 20-plus degree. It's can you get past 24? That's what nobody's able to do yet.
No, that's a good point.
The problem Baylor had is Baylor was able to jump out to a big lead because they took advantage of the turnovers on the other side of the ball. But Baylor went away from what was working in the first half. That's the danger. And if Baylor would have been able to kind of keep putting pedal to the metal, then they would have been in much better position in my
and that's good, and that's going to be huge, honestly, for Notre Dame, because we've seen them come out strong and then kind of ease back.
Right.
What was that a BK thing?
Right.
Was that just how they are?
Right.
We're gonna find out.
And here's a comment from Brian Hazen. It says, "Get the ball out early." To a degree, that's true, but that's kind of what Oklahoma State wants you to do. They want you to just get the ball out quickly because they're coming downhill so aggressively. They're getting to the ball. You have to find ways to move the pocket, and bootlegs aren't necessarily great because they're one of the more disciplined backside bootleg defenses that I've seen. It has to be more about moving the pocket in true like sprint outs. It has to be moving the pocket in more some half rolls where you're moving rolling away from Colin Martin.
Yep.
It's going to have to be about moving the pocket with your quick game, just meaning getting the ball out quickly, in those ways. But you also have to find ways to get the ball down the field.
Mm-hmm.
You have to find ways to level them. You have to find ways to take shots down the field, which means at the end of the day, at some point in time, your offensive line and your backs have to protect. Right. I mean, you have to. You need at least 10 clean pockets in this game. If Notre Dame can give Jack Cohn at least 10 clean pockets in this game, again, we're expecting to throw more about 30 times, if maybe more. 10 clean pockets isn't a ton.
Right.
But if you can scheme them correctly and then do that, then you're going to be okay. Searcher Green says rollout Cohnism. Yes, a rollout with Jack Cohn like he did early in the season, right? He throws the ball pretty well on the run.
Right.
It's not rolling him out to run him. Sometimes let me calm down. Yes, roll out with Jack Cohn like he did a million times at Wisconsin and he's done at Notre Dame.
Quarterbacks can roll out, and you don't have to be overly athletic to do it either. It's about depth, and it's about squaring your hips, and it's about
it's about isolations on the outside.
Right.
Yes. I would love to see a rollout where Michael Mayer's isolated on a safety on some kind of outcut or something like that. Yes, I would like to see that. You got Braden Lindsey screaming across the backside on a drag route. Like they hit for a big play that set up a score against Florida State. Just saying.
Definitely possible. And I want to see, and we talked, look, if anybody's been listening, we talked about moving the pocket and getting Jack Cohn on the run a little bit and getting him outside the pocket. We were advocating that for a long time.
You have to roll. You have to do half rolls. You have to do different things.
You can't just stand there.
You have to change the launch point of the quarterback. If you don't change the launch point of the quarterback against a team that leads the nation in sacks, then guess what? Your quarterback's going to get sacked a lot.
Exactly. And then you're going to be behind the chains, and you're not going to be able to have those sustained drives we just talked about. So, you're going to have to.
And there's some other stuff they'll do, but we'll dive more into that as we get into the Notre Dame side of this matchup moving forward.
Yeah. But bottom line, this defense is solid, and they're not going to make a bunch of mistakes. They're not going to. Yeah, they're not going to just let a guy loose. Okay, like that's just not. Probably going to happen.
No, you have to get real creative with it. I'll say this: there have been a few times I've seen them turn guys loose. It's just the quarterback never had the time to get there. There was one play in the first matchup against Baylor where they actually turned a receiver loose, but the three technique just beat the guard so bad that he drilled the quarterback. It ended up being like a 40-yard completion, but the guy had to wait on it.
Yeah.
If he was able to set it and let it rip, then there you go. That's the reality of it. So it's gonna be interesting. And Searcher Green said, I don't think he has time to roll out. We can talk after the game. That's the whole point. Rollouts are quick throws. They're not meant to be roll out, look down the field, and throw. This isn't 1985. Rollouts are quick 1-2 reads. It's hit the slide, hit the out, or hit the drag. And if it's not there, you're out of the pocket, you throw it away. But you've moved the pocket. Right. And then you know what you come back to in a couple plays later, you sprint out. If they're super aggressive to it, you're in a sprint draw and your stud, Chris Tyree takes that thing out the backside for a 60-yard game. I mean, that's what game planning has to be.
Exactly.
It's moving the pocket. It's getting them to think they can't just pin their ears back and come after the quarterback, because if they call an inside blitz, which they like to do, and you're rolling outside, guess what? They're screwed.
It's null and void.
That's part of the chess match of this game. Now, sometimes you're going to roll out right into a rover blitz and blow it up.
Right.
That's part of that's part of the matchup, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But that's what they have to do. They have to find ways to change the launch point of the quarterback in this game, because Oklahoma State will crush you if you just sit back, because you can't just nickel and dime them either because they're just going to close so quickly on the football on the perimeter.
Right.
They're a pretty athletic
team. They rally,
team.
yeah.
They're not a super athletic team, but they're pretty athletic on the back end. They're one of the 2 or 3 most athletic defenses Notre Dame is going to face this year on the back end. So it's going to make it a fun matchup for sure.
Mm-hmm. No question.
Sure. So Vince, let's roll through some super chats. Then we'll get into some more questions here. We got one here from Freddie Nutt. It's right there. Nat Stadelbauer calling it now. Styles is going to make some big plays. Need to get him the ball in space. Is there any room for BVG on our defensive coaching staff? See what?
No.
Why you got to go there? Why are you trying? Just trying to get. Freddie's just trying to he wants to see me go off on a rant.
Yeah, he saw you doing the deep breathing exercises, and
he's just I think we got him on the verge.
Yeah, he sees
him on the verge of a meltdown. Let's go for it. I want to address this sort of here real quick. So obviously the Gator Bowl between Texas A&M and Wake Forest has been canceled because of a COVID outbreak, and Michael Brahoni says, what precautions, if any, is Notre Dame taking to protect the team from the COVID-19 virus that is spreading rapidly once again through sports and nationwide? Would hate to see them not be able to play in the Fiesta Bowl, or worse, it be canceled. Texas A&M can't play in their bowl game due to COVID. Number one, this is a virus that isn't going away. It's a virus that has animal reservoirs. It's not going to be exterminated, just like the common cold and a lot of other viruses haven't been exterminated. At some point in time, we're going to have to learn to live with it and understand that as variants come and go, we have to analyze the variants that they are. I'm not going to say much more beyond this because it's going to turn into a political conversation, because 99% of the people that I know can't have a rational conversation about COVID. The reality is it's a virus. It's a virus that's going to spread, just like we haven't eradicated the flu that's been around for over 100 years. It's not going to go away. It's going to spread. I mean, 99% of the team is vaccinated. So if the vaccines aren't, that are mandated for athletes and by the school aren't stopping the spread, then what exactly are you supposed to do? Can't isolate them in their rooms for the next 2 weeks, correct? So it's a virus. It's going to spread. We need to have some common sense about looking at the data for the countries that have already had this Omicron variant, and the fact that from what I have, the most recent studies, 80% fewer hospitalizations and severe sicknesses. It tends to be more of an upper respiratory thing, which is more flu-like in it's not like the flu. I'm not saying that, but flu-like in its symptoms than some of the more dangerous lower respiratory things. That's coming from scientists. So we have to be able to stop treating every single variant the same if we're going to do this, because you can't just say COVID-19 and it's like it's the same virus that we've been dealing with for 2 years. That's not how viruses work. And so if we don't learn to live with it, then we're going to continue to have these problems. And the reality is there is nothing that they can do. It's a virus. Viruses spread. They mutate. That's what happens, And when it's a virus that has animal reservoirs, which this one, every single scientific journal I've read says that's why, like polio and some of these other things, they didn't have, if you can create a vaccine that stops it from spreading in humans, then it won't spread because it has no animal reservoirs. The ones that last do. The other one is again, if the vaccine doesn't stop the spread, which they don't, that's just that's not my opinion. That's what the CDC said. I'm just going by what the government said. The vaccines don't stop the spread of the virus. They protect you from symptoms. Am I correct, Vince? You're vaccinated. Am I correct?
That's what
they've said. Correct.
Yeah, it lessens the symptoms.
Correct. Okay. Right. So I don't know what to tell you other than that. So there's nothing they can do. You can't. If you're going to let them be around human beings, then some people are going to get COVID.
Yes.
How you have to, but the reality is we're not in a position yet. We're still treating COVID like we were 2 years ago, and we're not evolving with the science. That's the problem. And that's about all I feel. I probably said too much on that because you're going to have some people just losing their minds.
I'm sure
right now, but I mean, that's the.
It is what it is. And they haven't,
yeah.
I guess I was doing a little research while you were talking. They haven't canceled the game yet, but
Texas A&M's not playing.
Yeah, right. Texas A&M is not playing. So they're trying to find a replacement.
I hope they can. I hope they can, because it would suck for the kids at Wake Forest.
Oh.
And the guys at Texas A&M didn't do anything wrong. I mean, from what I understand, that Jimbo Fisher's bragged about how vaccinated the team is. I mean, they didn't do anything wrong. They got a vaccine. They thought they were good to go. You know what I mean?
Right.
So,
yep.
Nobody did anything wrong here. The players, the team, it's life.
It's unfortunate.
Yeah.
I mean, that bottom line, it's unfortunate. And that would have been a fun matchup to watch.
Yeah.
So, it's unfortunate for all of us, because I would have enjoyed watching that game.
Yeah, it's going to be a really good game.
Yeah.
And I think Wake Forest would have had a shot to move the ball on.
Oh, yeah. I think so.
It's going to be a good game. Because if you look at what North Carolina did to that defense last year, without Javonte Williams, without Michael Carter, without De'Ami Brown, they still moved the ball on them a little bit. I would have liked to have seen what this Wake team could do against an SEC defense. That would have been a really interesting matchup.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it would have been a good matchup for A&M to see, their defense against a really good offense, because that's been my question, is like, how are they against really good offenses, that kind of thing. So it was going to be one of the more intriguing matchups of this offseason. And it's unfortunate for the kids at Texas A&M that they don't get a chance to, the guys that are going pro or the guys that are seniors. It's a bummer that they don't. I wish, since here's the thing I wish that they would be willing to do, since there are no games after this, is move it back a week.
Right.
Why can't we just move it back to the 8th? There's no championship on the line, right? There's no like the winner gets to go play in the college football playoff. Move it back a week.
Right.
Like, why can't they do that?
We can all reschedule. I mean, it is what it is. I mean, it's inconvenient. But
that's the thing that kind of that's the kind of thing that I guess I didn't understand, is why.
Yeah.
And for all I know, maybe they were willing to do it. And Searcher said the game is 9 days away. They still had time to test out and play. The problem is they've had certain position groups. This is what I read. Certain position groups have just been hammered with it, meaning everyone's tested and they just can't go through practice. They can't practice. They don't have enough guys to practice.
Yeah, and being ready a day before the game.
Right. They got to practice.
Ready to play the game.
Right.
Like,
they can't practice.
You can't do that.
So that's why I wish they would move. Now, for all I know, Wake and the Gator Bowl were willing to move it a week, and A&M said,
we don't know.
We're not. I mean, I have no idea. I just wish they could have moved it back a week.
Agreed.
So that's the bummer of the whole thing.
Agreed.
So, but it would have been a good matchup.
We have another super chat from Sean. Thank you, Sean, very much.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see a dip in production next year, or do you think Notre Dame will finally have that swagger we've needed to overcome the big games we usually lose? You are number one, by the way.
Hey, you got the acronym thing down that time, Vince. Good job, buddy. I'm proud of you.
I'm so not hip in any way.
Sean, that's a great question. I don't know the answer, because there's so many unknowns.
Yes.
Right. Like, I could sit there and say, I think that they're going to have more production next year. I'm confident in it. I think they're going to have a dynamic quarterback next year. I think they're going to have some really good skill as long as people don't transfer. I think the offensive line, if what we're hearing about who the offensive line coach is going to be, check the message board. Then, I'm excited about what that group is going to be. I think the defense is going to be pretty good. But again, does Foskey and Adamiola come back?
Right.
Does Kevin Austin come back? There's still some question marks. Does Jarrett Patterson come back? There's still some question marks that have to get answered, that we just don't know who's coming back, that can really make me comfortably say, yes, they're going to get back better. Having said that, I do think this team is going to be a confident football team next year. Now, that confidence can be easily shaken early on if you go out and get your butt whooped in the opener. But it's just so early, to be honest with you. I mean, I'd like to sit there and say, yes, Marcus Freeman is going to do everything that Brian Kelly could never do, which is win big games. But that would be a fan take. Like me being like talking as a fan, there's no analysis behind that, because Marcus Freeman is 0-0 in games right now.
Mm-hmm.
And so I really don't know. But I think I'm hoping that that's what we see. But until they go out there and actually prove it, I mean, look, that's what I love about this. It's a show me business. Right. And we can feel great about what Marcus Freeman is doing, and we can be excited that he's head coach. And Vince and I are thrilled that Marcus Freeman is the new head coach of Notre Dame.
No doubt.
We were thrilled when they hired him as D coordinator. We advocated for him being the next head coach when Brian Kelly left. But at the end of the day, it's time for Coach Freeman to show me, right? To show it. And I'm confident he will.
Yeah.
But until we actually see it.
Yeah. The confidence level for me, and I will, refer to what Brian just said from an X's and O's standpoint. Is too many unknowns. I don't know. But what I do know, in my opinion, like what I think I know, is that Notre Dame will be prepared to play every game from an emotional standpoint. Okay. And I'm not saying it's just going to be the hype train and, all of that. I'm not saying that at all. But what I am saying is they will be prepared from an emotional standpoint to play every single game. I feel very confident in saying that part.
Because that's how the defense played. That's
right.
The one thing we can say is like the defense game, even like the Cincinnati game where the team just looked a little flat, the defense still came to play. They gave up a couple big plays, but they came to play and they held Cincinnati like over 2 touchdowns below their season scoring average.
Mm-hmm.
And 10 of those points came on shortened fields. And then if you add the 2 missed field goals and take away the 10 points, that's 20 points, right? So even then, Vince, they came to play. The North Carolina game, they made mistakes. They did not come to play, to your point. So we've seen the defense do that. The other thing I love about it is after that really bad performance against North Carolina, that defense responded in a way where they were pissed and just crushed their next 4 opponents. That tells me something about the kind of mentality that Coach Freeman and his staff were able to instill in those players mentally. And if you can find a way to kind of project that to the whole team, this team's going to be a lot of fun. And I think that when you are able, if Brian Kelly's removed from the equation and this becomes more about this offense takes on Tommy Rees's persona, it's going to have a lot of swagger because Tommy Rees is I'm trying to think of how to say this without it sounding like not how Tommy Rees is a very confident guy. Very confident guy. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I think you have to be successful at 29 years old. You better be really confident in yourself because a lot of 29-year-olds get put on that stage and they're going to second guess everything that they do. You have to be open to, okay, are we doing this the right or the wrong way? But when you get into a game, you got to have conviction.
Mm-hmm.
And so far we've seen Tommy Rees be that way. And if the offense becomes his personality, like, let's be honest, folks, Tommy Rees did not start multiple years and throw for as many yards. I mean, he's one of the 5 most prolific passers in Notre Dame history. Think about that.
Yeah.
That didn't happen because God blessed him with 6'5" body and a humongous arm and great athleticism. It was all here and here. Yep. He was smart and he was real confident. Sometimes too confident. You're like, dude,
and that's why he was turned over
that ball. You don't have dang Chris' arm.
Yeah, exactly.
But he was so confident that I can do this. Well, here's the great thing about him being a coordinator. All the things that maybe made him mistake prone as a quarterback could make him a great offensive coordinator.
Exactly.
Because recruit quarterbacks can make those throws. Yeah,
because he sees what needs to happen. Right. I mean, plain and simple, right? I mean, I think it's exciting personally.
Yeah, me too.
And we couldn't go a show without bringing up the white hat. And so Darian, thank you for the super chat. He says, Brian, is that hat on the IB store? Love the show. And the answer is yes.
Thank you. It is.
The answer is yes. And I answered it right after he put it up, in the chat, but I still wanted to pull it up because he did super chat it. And I think, I think that's it for the super chat. So I'm going to scroll all the way back to the top, Brian.
Let's do it.
And see what I can find. Here we go. Alan, completely off topic. I love it.
Mm-hmm.
Any thoughts on the Army-Missouri game tonight?
I would love to see Army win that game.
Me too.
I mean, I always look for it. I don't have any thoughts on the actual matchup. But, I always root for Army, except when they're playing Notre Dame. I always root for Army. I
rooted for Navy in the Army-Navy game, though.
Can't do it.
I
can't
did.
do it. So, I mean, all my family back in Norfolk, Virginia are probably going to not be happy with that. But I just, sorry, man.
That's fine.
It's like what did Kiefer Sutherland, the Marine guy, say? To Tom Cruise and Few Good Men. I love you, Navy. I love you, all you Navy boys. Every time we got to go fight, you guys give us a ride.
That's a great line, by the way. Was that in A Few Good Men? Is that what that was from?
A Few Good Men, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I love that line. I remember that really well.
Every time we got to go somewhere to fight, you guys give us a ride.
I thought that was for some reason. I thought that was from U571, but
that's from A Few Good Men. Yeah,
that's awesome. That's awesome.
Yep. One of my favorite. That's another movie I watch whenever it's on. I'll have it on in the background as I'm working.
Absolutely. Utah Irish, my 5 favorite times of the day. Number 1, breakfast. Number 2, lunch. Number 3, dinner. Number 4, bedtime. And number 5, Irish breakdown. Go Irish.
I'm going to spin this into a negative. You'd rather be sleeping than listening to our show.
I mean, you got to recharge the batteries, Brian. I mean, just saying.
I don't know what that means. I haven't experienced that in a long time.
You don't sleep.
One of these days, it's going to catch up to me. And I'm going to be like mid-show, and I'm going you're going to call Angela, like, hey, can you go down and wake Brian up? He's snoring during the show. He's Pat. That's what's going to be happening during the show.
Oh, I love it. I love it.
But we got some exciting things going on.
Oh, yes, we do. There's no question.
I'm going to have a little bit of a bigger staff here very, very soon that I'm very much excited about. Yes. Craig Sebring with a super chat.
Hit it. Craig, thank you very much. He says, if 3 or 4 of your receivers don't come back, do you see us looking heavy into the transfer portal?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
And they're going to have to.
They don't have a choice, unfortunately. As much as I dislike the transfer portal and the fit at Notre Dame, you're not going to have a choice. You literally need bodies.
Now, here's the thing. The transfer portal may not be just receivers. For example, let's just say they're like, look, there aren't any good receivers out there, so we're going to move JoJo Johnson and Xavier Watts to receiver, and now we got to go find some DBs in the transfer portal to replace them. That may, but it's still the portal. That's the reality of it.
Right, exactly.
Hopefully, they're going to have to hit the transfer portal, and like in an ideal world, they get 1 or 2 high school kids, or they get 1 high school, 1 portal if everybody comes back. You're going to need at least 1 or 2 more guys, even if everybody comes back. And, if they then lose guys from the current team, you're really in trouble. And Searcher Green has a correction to make. He said bedtime. He didn't say sleeping. Good point.
That's actually a really good. That's
a very good point. That's on me. I didn't think about that enough because right now all I can think about is just going to sleep because I am tired.
Oh, that's great. A lot of chat going on, which is fantastic. We're getting shout outs from where people live and all kinds of stuff like that.
I love this. Blaine Tiller says, can you talk more about media and practice so that Notre Dame puts out more videos?
That was a great video yesterday.
It was a great video.
It was a great video.
But that's what they should do that from they should have something like tomorrow where it's like it's Tommy Rees. And the next day it's Mike Elson, and the next day it's Mike Mickens, and then they should do that for every single practice.
Yeah.
So that's my comment. That would be a great way for Notre Dame to connect to their fans, build more excitement, build on the momentum without having to allow the media around the team. Because I'll be honest with you, the one thing people say about COVID, the one thing that I would say Notre Dame can do is from here until you get to game time, limit how many outside people are around your program. So if there was media availability, just to be on I know this hurts us, I would make it all Zoom.
Yeah.
Because again, Notre Dame's mistake is Notre Dame's not listening as much to the science that they need to. They're only allowing vaccinated people around the team. That's not doing anything.
Right.
Based on I saw a study come out of England that 4 or 5 of the deaths in England from COVID deaths were of vaccinated, boosted people. So not just the initial vax, but either triple or quadruple boosted people. The reality is the CDC has said the vaccine does not stop the spread of COVID. So allowing vaccinated people around your football team is not protecting your football team from getting the virus. It just protects your football team, in theory, from having the more severe symptoms, which ultimately at the end of the day is what we should be caring about. We should
absolutely
people getting it's not a problem. We need to be worried about, are we protecting people that are vulnerable to the symptoms? And if people are getting it, are they sick from it? And how do we treat that?
And how sick do they get? Yeah, exactly.
So that's my thing is because hey, this is something that I know people that have been warning for months that this is going to happen, because this is why it spread in the South 3 months ago, because during the summer, what are most people in the South doing? They're indoors, right? Because it's hot. So they're indoors more. During the winter, where are people in the North? They're indoors. That's why the flu is seasonal, right? It's a virus. It's seasonal. This is going to happen. It was always going to migrate up to the north, and it was going to hit the north at this time. Just like the flu. Not saying it's the flu it's a different thing from the flu, okay? But I'm saying it's still a virus and it's still seasonal because we're a couple years in, it's going to be more seasonal. And that's what we have to prepare ourselves for. So, yeah, that's the thing I would say to answer the question earlier. Is the only thing I would do for the team is I would just limit the number of outside people that can be around my football team. That's what I would do.
A couple super chats down there at the Brian. At the bottom, Brian. At the Brian. Ooh. Yeah, you want here we go. From Quaffs. I'll go with Quaffs. Thank you very much for the super chat. If you could add one player from any previous Notre Dame team to next year's team, who would it be?
Oh boy. If I could add anyone to next year's team, I mean, my answer is almost always Rocket Ismail. Like, that's almost always my answer because he's my favorite player. But yeah, right. I mean, Rocket Ismail, yes, that's okay. Give me Rocket Ismail with Tyler Buckner quarterback and the O-line they're going to have and Michael Mayer at tight end. And yeah, that's what I would do. Right.
I wouldn't mind seeing Jimmy Clausen at the helm, seeing him sling it around to some of these guys. Yeah,
but who's he throwing it to if they lose everybody?
But I think there's still guys here
if they lose guys. If they lose guys, that's a concern.
That's different.
Whereas if Rocket comes, it doesn't matter who leaves.
Ask me again in a month, all right? Ask me again in a month who's still on the team.
I would rather have Tyler Buckner thrown to Rocket than Jimmy Clausen thrown to the guys on the team now. And that's not a knock on the guys' team now. It's just the Rocket is – because the Rocket impacts your special teams. Exactly.
And plus, I'd love to see him in front of a microphone.
Oh, yeah.
Because he didn't get his just due from the media. No, I shouldn't say that, but like, yeah.
There just wasn't as much availability. Right. I mean, there wasn't social media. Right.
I want to see him on Twitter.
I would love to see Rocket in today's offenses.
Sure.
I love this response. I'm not even going to read it. I'm just going to put it up there. That's phenomenal. That's phenomenal.
Yes,
that's phenomenal. But no, I'd love to see the Rocket in a modern offense. That would like. Could you imagine like the Rocket in like Oregon's 2010 offense, or in USC's 05 offense?
No, the answer is no.
Like take Reggie Bush off that team and put Rocket in, where they'd use him more as a receiver and as a back. Oh my gosh.
The answer is no. We had one more down there. If you want to throw that one up, I think
that was just we got a little super sticker here.
Thank you, Jared. Appreciate that very much.
Yep.
I want you to comment on this one. Conley says a guy can only dream, but I would love to see someone like Samardzija or Rima McKnight as the new wide receiver coach if they made a change.
I'm fine with that. If it's a guy that wants to get into coaching, like that's what he wants to do, I'd be open to that. I think there are some positions, yeah. I think there are some positions that are more a guy that hasn't coached before can make a faster transition. Running back, wide receiver, linebackers are probably the three, and then D-line. Those are the four to me, because as you get older at those positions, it's become so much more of a technical game. You know, like Brian Hartline went from playing to GA for a year, and he was a GA because that was the 2017 the year. Tommy Rees was technically a GA that year too, because it was the year before they could go to 10, and then the next year when they expanded to 10 assistant coaches, he was the full-time coach. He made a really clean, smooth transition. I think that is a position where, as a veteran that's played a long time in the National Football League, if it's someone like a Golden Tate or somebody who's actually played, it would hey, look, you're a veteran now. You're teaching young guys things like that. So you've done some teaching and you make that transition. The reason I'd be a little bit more skeptical about Samardzija, and I don't know what Raymond McKnight's been doing. If he's been coaching high school football for 10 years, I have no clue. I have no clue what he's been doing. But I know Samardzija hasn't been around football in 15 years. I'd be real skeptical about that one.
Right, agreed.
It'd be another former player. Like I heard that Michael Floyd's coaching now. Like that wouldn't make a lot of sense for a lot of reasons that don't have anything to do with football. But like if Golden Tate retired and wanted to come back as an analyst or something like that, and you do that for a year or GA for a year, and then he becomes a receivers coach. Yeah, because I think that one little buffer year would be nice, just because it gives you a chance to get used to what the ins and outs of putting a practice plan together and stuff like that looks like, but you can pick that stuff up pretty quickly. I mean, look, I went from playing to my second, my first year as a coach, I learned a lot. My second year as a coach, I was coaching All-American, and I was 24 years old, 23 years old. You can't tell me that Golden Tate with a year on as an analyst or something like that, learning the ins and outs of coaching by year 2, couldn't be ready to go out there and coach receivers at a pretty high level. I'm pretty sure he could. Yeah. As an example. Again, because
absolutely.
He's been around the game. My issue with Samardzija is if Samardzija wanted to come be a pitching coach, I'd be open to it because that's a sport he's played professionally for all these years.
Exactly.
But Jeff Samardzija hasn't played football in 15 years.
Right.
So I don't know how up he is on teaching guys how to read routes or read defenses and run routes in the modern game and all that. I have no clue. Where he is. I know Golden Tate's up on it because he's still playing.
Right. Who's he with right now?
I don't know.
Yeah, I couldn't remember if he got picked up by anybody because I knew he was a free agent right when the season started. But yeah.
Looks like he's with the Titans on the practice squad.
Oh, interesting move. Okay.
It's 33. Man.
Yeah, I know, right?
I feel really, really old.
Yeah, exactly. Drew, Brian and Vincenzo, Gator Bowl issue, definitely something on the radar, especially since Florida ain't letting that money go. You think that affects the Fiesta Bowl? I don't see how that one would directly affect the Fiesta Bowl. It's not going to be like a trickle down where they take somebody and then it would take them away from something else. They're going to have to take a non-bowl affiliated team right now to play them. I mean, no, I don't think, unless there's something I'm missing, I think
somebody in the chat earlier said something like go get Florida State. I don't know if that would necessarily be the ideal thing since I believe Florida State and Wake Forest played this year. I don't think that would be an overly sexy matchup. They played in September. But, I mean, find a team from another league that's not in a bowl game, and that's –
right.
That's what
there's teams out there. I mean, there's teams out there that you can go grab. I'm kind of saying this half jokingly, but give Nebraska a chance. I mean, how many 3-9 teams outscored their opponents on the season? I know, right?
Which is the most absurd thing I think I might have ever seen. I've seen teams with a losing record outscore their opponents. Nebraska went 3-9 and outscored their opponents this year by over 60 points. That's absurd.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how's that even possible? Oh, it's because they didn't lose a single game by double digits, and their wins were all blowouts. But that is an absurd statistic. But talk about the best 3-9 team in the history of college football. It'd be Nebraska because they could have easily been 10-2 with good coaching.
Yeah, I agree completely.
9-3. Let's just be safe and say 9-3. And games where they had leads or had the ball with a chance to win. Yes, yeah. But, I mean, there's teams out there. Illinois is a team out there. Rutgers, TCU, Texas isn't in a bowl game, right?
I don't think so.
So I mean, that'd be a team that I would go look at, something like that. Something that would be some kind of marquee matchup. Sure. But again, here's the problem with finding a team to replace them. You're going to run into the same problem that you have with moving the game back. So let's say you called up Texas. Say, Texas, you guys won't play a game. So what? Texas has their players have been away from the team for now 3 weeks. They haven't played a game in 3 weeks.
They're probably not on campus either.
Right. They're just going to get ready to play a game in 9 days or 10 days or whatever the case may be.
That's real tough.
No, move the flipping game back a week.
Right.
Because if you're going to get a new team, let's say Texas A&M just says we don't want to play it. Then go get Texas and then move it back a week. And then you've got 2 weeks to get ready. Okay, fine.
9 days is tough.
Yeah.
I mean and I realize everybody's going to say, well, they only have a week to get ready for other games. Yes, but they're already practicing.
Right, exactly. They haven't been together as a team in almost a month.
Right. And there's guys that, and I'm speaking very generally, not necessarily about Texas specifically, but there's guys that have already removed themselves from the team to start preparing for the NFL draft, for all the different things that happen after your football career, right? So that's going to be tough to call all those guys back.
I think your point too is good. That one right there is that most of these guys aren't even home.
Right.
I mean, at school. They're home.
Right. I mean, we're 3 days before Christmas and the semesters are over. Like, kids are at home, So yeah, that would be, it's going to just logistically, it would be very difficult.
Yeah.
So I'll go there. Speaking of Illinois Irish 82, I'm going to say that stands for Illinois. I think the only thing I worry about Kyron not playing is his pass blocking ability.
I think that's very fair.
That is very fair.
Especially if you're going to be in situations where you're asking them to go against a second-team All-American linebacker in Malcolm Rodriguez or a guy like Colin Oliver, which at times you're going to be matched up against. So, yeah, this is going to be a throw him to the fire kind of moment for Chris Tyree and Logan Diggs and Audric Estime. No doubt about it.
Yeah.
No doubt about it. You got to be ready to do it. You can't just say, "Hey, well, you got young guys in there." No, they got to get it done.
Right. Blaine says their D line versus our O line is the biggest what if going into the game.
Oh yeah, it's the biggest matchup of the game, in my opinion.
No doubt.
And we'll have some shows down the road like this next week and a half where we're going to talk about that, Blaine. But you're absolutely right. Absolutely right.
Conley, I know it's not even thought of yet, but Mike Tressel for defensive coordinator.
Well, that's been thought of. That's a name that's been a very popular name thrown around as a potential candidate. So that's a name that I would be intrigued by, very intrigued by. He had some very, very good linebacking cores at Michigan State, did a nice job of riding that ship after Harlan Barnett kind of hurt it a little bit at Michigan State. And then, of course, he did a really nice job this year at Cincinnati. They weren't as good this year as they were last year, but, someone like working under Marcus Freeman. Yeah, that's an intriguing name for me. One of several that I've heard.
Sure. Joshua, Vincent Bryan, would you rather have a prime Mike Gundy mullet or a Brian Van Gorder goatee?
Anything revolving Brian Van Gorder is a no-go for me. So,
Brian's rocking the mullet.
Give me the mullet. If those are my only two options, I will be the mullet rockinest dude that you'll ever see. There's no doubt about that.
That's great. Yeah, if I got the mullet, I would match like 90% of my baseball players right now. That's like
why
the thing.
Is that a thing now with
I
young
don't
people?
know.
I don't understand.
It is. It's tragic, is what it is.
That's a great way of explaining it. It's a great way of explaining it.
Okay.
Mike Gundy can get away with it because he's a millionaire, I guess, and he doesn't care.
The kids at my school are not that at all.
See, this is J.P. Buellsfeld. Now, this is the right answer here.
There we go.
My 5 favorite times of the day are IB, my man.
There it is. It is. Mark Stallman, will this matchup against the same defense that Ohio State is going to run help them in the opener next year?
Not necessarily, because it's not locked in that they're going to necessarily run that same type of defense because the personnel is going to be different. So it'll philosophically be the same. So I think there will be some advantages, Mark, in regards to they will have a philosophical understanding of what Jim Knowles does. What we don't know and won't know is how is he going to use that with the specific personnel that Ohio State's going to have. That's going to be the difference. But that's no different than really any other season opening bowl prep or game prep.
Yeah.
But I think watching all the gym, because here's the thing, the game won't help. This is the thing. The game's not going to help Notre Dame get ready for them next year because it's not going to be him running the defense. What will help is all the film watching they've done of the defense that Jim Knowles has actually done. That'll help them. But they would have done that anyway,
right? If
they weren't playing Oklahoma State, because they'd be looking at Oklahoma State film getting ready for next year's game. So that's where it would be.
K-Mac wants to know what the deadline on the transfer portal is. I don't know if that's deadline to go in or date. Yeah, exactly. I don't think there really is one.
I think there's a deadline for basically you can't join a team once the team has kind of started their season. Like once a semester started at the school you're going to, I think that would most likely be it.
Right.
Yeah. I'm sorry. This is a good one, Vince. I want to pull this one up.
Please.
I'm at the bottom. Richard Robson finally out of Facebook jail. Never missed a show though. Brian, would you add new plays and formations in this game? Lou was famous for that. BK, never. I don't think that's fair to Brian Kelly. I mean, we saw some wrinkles and stuff at times for sure. I would always be open to new plays and formations. It's very limited on the new plays, and it's more about wrinkles onto what you're already doing. Or if there's like a run play that you identify in your pre-practice preparation, say, hey, boy, we could really hurt them. Like we were talking about earlier, Vince, boy, we could really hurt them. We got to move the pocket. And they're real aggressive. When teams sprint out, boy, they really over pursue. I think we could add a sprint draw that could knock it out. And then you got 15 practices to work on getting that sprint draw ready to go. Something like that. And I'm just making that up. I don't know if they're doing that. I'd say something like that, or, there's like some pass game wrinkles, but you're not just going to reinvent the wheel. And Richard's not saying that. I'm just clarifying what I mean, being open to new plays. Formations, definitely. Although, there's only so many formations you can use, but variations of those formations, certainly. There's certainly wrinkles you're going to show, but it's all about, what do you feel is going to allow you to have the opportunities to go out and be successful.
Sure.
So you're now back to Bang, okay? You're now back to Bang 1801. Or we're not going to call you Ben G anymore, okay? You're back to Bang. Since you have a mullet, you're now back. When you cut the mullet, we'll call you Ben G, okay? So
I told my kids, I said, the first day, if you make varsity, it's haircut day. Like, I'm bringing a barber to the field.
Yep.
It's haircut day. They're like, well, I don't want to make varsity then. Okay, cool.
Okay, fine.
It's all good.
If kids these days.
No, I know. Oh, Josh Wilson. Do you try to attack Oklahoma State with seam routes? I said routes. Out of the 12 personnel,
Not the only person that needs a nap, apparently.
Mayer and Tech is down the seam, or do you try 11 with more speed at wide receiver? My answer is yes. Like all of the above. Yeah. I mean, you can't just do one or the other.
Right.
It's all of the above, and I think you can have success with both. So, it's everything.
Yeah. I think the key is, and we'll get into this in future shows, but spreading them out more often than not is going to be a key.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be a key.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Apparently, Drew St. Blaise also has a mullet. So, fellas, please stop. For the future of our country, so that our enemies around the world know that we are still a formidable nation, please shave the mullet off. Okay? They're going to realize how soft we are. I'm kidding. I'm kidding about this.
It's a joke. It's a joke, people.
Well, some people don't have a sense of humor.
I know.
So I think people on this show do, but you get the occasional insane person on Twitter that actually thinks we think that Notre Dame put that video out because we talked about it in the show. Like, actually thinks that we think that. Like,
right. Because, they had the time to turn it around and do everything.
Yes, and let, right. It's like, come on. Like,
oh my God, they said we got to do a video. Let's get to work.
Yes, seriously. Yeah, like, lighten up, people. We're having some fun.
It's great. I love it. Because there was that one insane person, by the way.
Yes, he literally thought that we all thought. That they had no intention of doing a video, but they listened to our show on an afternoon and decided to mic Marcus Freeman up that next day and got a video put out in an hour and a half after the practice. $20 says that practice was mic'd up and recorded before we did our show.
Exactly.
Like, can you just lighten up, please? Come on, man.
Oh, gosh. I'll put this up because it was exciting. Notre Dame baseball preseason number 10. That's exciting.
Yeah.
I think Link Jarrett, man, that program is just
I've read that they've got a really good freshman class coming in too.
They do. And it's very exciting. So they're not sleeping on Notre Dame anymore.
And they didn't lose a whole lot. I mean, obviously lost Nico at first base, and then Tommy Sheridan's not back. But Tommy Sheridan got hurt at the beginning of the season anyway. He wasn't even there. So,
exactly. Nobody's sleeping on Notre Dame. They're not unranked anymore, and they're not picked to finish last in the ACC. So, that's exciting.
Steve Hilliker says, so you're saying you knew, talking about the video? No, I didn't know. It's just great minds think alike, as opposed to I'm dictating what Notre Dame is going to go do. Because last I checked, Dell Alexander is still the receivers coach, so clearly Notre Dame's not listening to me. Brian Kelly lasted 12 years. They definitely didn't listen to me on that one, right? So
right.
But I love this, Steve. I appreciate that. But
that's great. Mark says you can already see the acceptance of player alumni being more welcome. Do you think Brian Kelly viewed them as a threat?
No, I don't think he saw them as a threat. I just don't think he cared about the past of Notre Dame. And I don't think that I think Brian Kelly wanted it to always be about Brian Kelly.
Mm-hmm.
And when Rocket Ismail or Tony Rice or Chris Zorich or Irv Smith or whoever else is the big name from the past, Steve Berline, I mean, whoever, it's like that person's taken away from you. It's one of the reasons I don't think Brian Kelly allowed his assistant coaches to really do much with the media. It's about Brian Kelly. I mean, we've already seen more appearances from assistant coaches and the coordinators now than we ever saw from them during Brian Kelly's tenure.
Yeah. Yep. I agree with that. Joshua Wilson, would you be willing to go up tempo with more tight ends next year if we lose wide receivers, or do you use running backs in the passing game like we did with Williams this year?
I think more the latter for me, Vince. I think basically what you need to do is you need to go back and study Stanford's offense from 2010 to 2015 and just go with that. I mean, how to use 12 and 13 personnel in the pass game. I mean, it would be a disaster in my opinion.
Now, Sean may be a stalker here, but I'm going to put it up anyway. He says, "Where are your seats for the game?"
I'm not sure what section, but we're in the upper row. But I got front row seats in the upper deck, which I was like, I went on there right away. I was like, when my wife was like, so I wasn't going to go to the game. Vince, you remember how it all went down?
Oh, I do.
When I saw that you had to be vaccinated. So for people don't know, the reason I don't go to Notre Dame press conferences because I'm not vaccinated. I've had COVID. My wife's had COVID, and every study that I've ever says that I don't need the vaccine. That's my personal choice. Vince is vaccinated. That's his personal choice because that's what's best for him and his family and his job and all that. That's just the decision we made. I was bummed that I couldn't go to the game.
Like bummed. I've never seen Brian so depressed.
Yeah, because I was so looking forward to this game, and my wife was like, "You should."
We were looking forward to it, like because we haven't watched a game together in like 2 years.
It's been a while.
Yeah.
Oh, 19, correct?
Yeah.
2019 season.
Yeah.
Well, we did watch one together this year, but it was in the stands. But like covering the game,
exactly.
That kind of thing.
Like I was really looking forward to it.
Yeah. So I was bummed, and so my wife was like, you should go, and I was like, I don't really want to, and it's cost a lot of money because if y'all don't know, I'm kind of stingy. I just don't like spending money just to spend money. If I'm gonna spend money, I don't have some purpose or whatever, because it's just how I am. And she said to me, like, why do you work this hard if you're not willing to enjoy, life? And I was like, it's a really good point. So now I'm flying down. I'm flying my dad and my nephew down, and we're gonna be upper level, but I got row 1 seats, which is what I wanted. Because that, to me, I love being higher at a football game. I don't like sitting low where you got to like look over people. So we're kind of, I think about like the 35, 40 yard line, and we're in row 1. So we're going to have like I'm so excited about those seats.
I think you may have a better view than I do because
because you're in the corner. You're definitely deep in the corner.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty sure you have a better view.
I'm going to be texting you like what's happening. Like, what happened? Leave me alone, man. I'm not working. I'm relaxing. I got the day off. So I'm sorry. This is funny. I just had to pull this up. Thomas Lammers, Antonio Brown can hook you up with a vaccination card.
That's great.
That's not an option. If you make the choice not to get vaccinated, then you have to understand that there are consequences that come with that, and you accept those consequences. And that's what I choose. And somebody says, "How are you going if you're not vaccinated?" You don't have to be vaccinated to sit in the stands.
Correct. Martin Demo. Here we go.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think Notre Dame can or will ever whoop a team in the national championship like Alabama does? Always seems when we won it, it's been close. I'm only 29, by the way.
Well, I mean, the game against West Virginia was not close. I mean, it was 34-13, and Oklahoma or West Virginia scored late and went for 2. It was not a close game. The Notre Dame. I keep saying Oklahoma. The Notre Dame West Virginia game was not competitive. The championship game. And before that, the last championship that Notre Dame won, the Cotton Bowl game that they won in 77, we talked about this the other day, was 77 or 77. It was in 77. It was 38-10. So, look, I think games like that are not necessarily about one team is that much better than the other team. It's just how the games go sometimes. If Ohio State and Florida play again in 2016 or 2006, Florida does not blow Ohio State out again. The odds are better that Ohio State blows them out the next time they play than the other way around. Just like if Clemson and Alabama played again in 2018, I don't think Clemson beats them 44-16 every single time. It's just how they go sometimes.
Yeah.
title games tend to go that way for whatever reason. And it's like Super Bowls. There's been a lot more ugly Super Bowls than there have been great Super Bowls. Just kind of how they go, you know. Yep. So if Notre Dame's good enough to win a title, could they win some of them convincingly? Sure. I would imagine the first time, though, it'll be more like what Notre Dame did. Because like Alabama's title win was a lot closer. First time was a lot closer than the score dictated.
Sure.
They kind of ran away late, and then Cole McCoy got hurt, and that, but it was a competitive game for a while.
Cole Kramer, Vince doesn't give A+, and now he haircut shames. P.S. I have a fade. Does that make the cut?
Yeah. No, that's good.
I think fade, good to go. Fades are good.
I mean, whenever I go, I get like a little tight fade, like.
And look, you can hide a lot under a baseball hat, but the problem is they're not hiding anything, and we're not a very fast. We're not a very fast team to begin with.
The only way you can hide a mullet is in the dark.
And I'm worried about wind resistance and speed, and we have none of it. So we need to cut all the corners that we can.
And every time a kid tries going to the alley to catch a fly ball, his hat flies off because there's too much hair.
Oh my gosh!
Like you ever watch baseball games back in the 70s when everybody had big hair? Like hats always flying off as they're running. Can't keep a hat on those manes.
Yeah, exactly.
Can't do it.
No, you can't. The helmet's falling off. Yeah, that's not. Now, this is what I'm talking about here. Rashomon 18 says, my high school baseball coach is rolling in his grave from the mullet. We had to be high and tight or you weren't on the team. I'm with you 100%. The problem is this day and age, that's not going to happen. You just can't do it. So we can't have those kinds of rules. And frankly, at the school that I coach at, if I had those kind of rules, I wouldn't have a team. So I don't have enough guys waiting in line to be on the team.
and I'm about to date myself, Vince, but this guy, Conley, says Morgan Wallen is the reason everybody has a mullet. I have no freaking clue who that is.
None.
And it makes me sad that
did you Google him?
No.
I don't know who that is either.
I don't know who that is. But if that's why people, be your own person. I've had the same haircut since I was 16 years old.
Oh my. He's a singer.
Okay.
I think.
Whatever.
Wow.
But
he's definitely rocking the mullet.
Yeah. Okay. And then Ben G says, as a hockey player, the mullet fits. I have no clue what that means. We are so off the rails right now.
I know we are.
This show, we are so past talking football. But yeah, so it's kind of funny. Apparently, a lot of people know who he is.
Yeah.
Well, apparently, we're the only people that don't know who he is.
Yeah,
so, yeah, everybody knows who he is. Apparently,
oh my gosh, somebody had a man bun.
Yeah,
I'm not even going there.
That's an oxymoron. Oh my goodness gracious.
Let's just say I've had a chat with my son about having a man bun. I've had that talk with him.
No, this would be glorious. We need a Photoshop of BK with a mullet. That'd be great.
I have now officially got to the bottom. So
okay, then I think we can kind of wrap this thing up. Somebody said hockey hair is 100% a thing and it's glorious.
Okay, again, I don't watch hockey. I know nothing about.
Sorry.
I'm so ignorant when it comes to hockey. I really am. Now, I've gone to games before, and they're exciting, but that's about it for me.
I like watching Olympic hockey. It's about it.
I like watching the Olympics, period. So.
Yeah. Well, if they're good at it, America's good at the sport, I'll watch it. I'm not going to watch them with their brains beat in. But
fair enough.
But yeah, I all I know is when that little black puck goes into the net, it's a good thing. Yeah. They throw octopi on the the court and everything, and
Yeah.
So that's the proper plural for many It's not octopuses, it's octopi, correct? Am I correct here?
I think you are.
I think I'm correct here.
I think you're good. Hey, how about a football question to end it from Katie? She says, how do you guys feel about the college football playoff allowing teams to advance through COVID forfeit?
Yeah, that's an interesting one, Katie. Okay, so let's not get into whether I think that should or shouldn't happen, because I don't think it should. But let's just say they have it. I think that, look, if that's the rules going in, then that's the rules going in.
They put out like a press release, I guess,
in
the last day or two saying that that's what would happen.
I mean, so. I don't like it, but unfortunately, that's where we are. We're way behind where we should be from how we're dealing with this thing. But if that's the rules, it's the rules. I mean, I think I would put a huge asterisk by whoever won the championship that year. That's for darn sure.
Because you didn't have to win one of the games.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Which gives you could potentially give you two. Somebody's going to have an advantage from that. Either one team's going to have an advantage from not having played. Another team could have an advantage because they played and the other team didn't, and that other team's rusty.
Sure.
Yeah. I love this. UIW swimmer, pull a team forward and let Wake play Oklahoma State. So his pull a team forward is Notre Dame.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then let Wake Forest play them. So I love the subtlety of point one.
Yeah, I know, right?
Here's who I'm clearly talking about in point two. That is awesome, swimmer. I love that. But no, I mean, look, that's the reality of it. And to me, they should have had this decided before the season started. They had conference protocols on here's what did or didn't happen, so they've clearly clarified it. But, I mean, the problem with the playoff thing is it's different than, we were talking about the bowl game. Just move it back a week. I don't understand why they can't move it back a week because there is nothing afterwards. The challenge with a playoff game is you can't – then if you move that back, then you have to move everything back.
Right.
And they're not going to do that because for legitimate reasons. I mean, you've got a lot of things booked and reserved and all. I mean, it'd be a logistical nightmare to move basically 3 games around because you'd have to move the 2 semifinals plus the championship game. That'd be a nightmare. Whereas just moving the Gator Bowl back a week it'd be logistically challenging, but they're not
as challenging a move in multiple games
because they're not counting on the revenue from that the same way they are from the championship game. So it impacts 3 games, which I think makes it harder. Now, what I don't know, did they say in the release what happens if the 2 teams playing for the title, if that happens?
I did not see.
I
didn't see the release. I just saw that they would advance. That's all I saw. So maybe that's what that means is if you've got the championship and you've got 2 teams and one can't play, then the other team wins it. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that would be very.
Now, I did see the ACC basketball has changed their forfeit rule today. They got rid of the forfeit and they said they'll just reschedule, which is how they should. Like football, I understand the forfeit rule. I don't like it, but I understand it because it's difficult. It is so much easier to reschedule a regular season basketball game.
Right.
Like the fact that they had that was just an attempt to shame people into making sure that everybody was vaccinated. That's all that was.
Mm-hmm.
And now they're going away from it and changing the rule. Well, why? If that made sense to you before, why are you changing it now? Unless they're looking at the science and saying, yeah, this isn't something we should be forfeiting games for. Liability wise, we can't play it, but we'll make up for it. Who knows? But
I got one more here, and I think it's a pretty quick and easy one. Conley Ellis says thoughts on kicker and punter for next year. Well, they just signed their next punter, so he's probably going to be the punter as a freshman.
Yeah, most likely. Yeah, that would be Bryce McPherson, correct?
Yeah, and then Josh Bryan was the backup kicker this year, and he was a true freshman this year.
Mm-hmm.
I don't believe he didn't play in 4 games.
He played in, I think, only 1. I think he kicked against Georgia Tech.
I believe you're accurate.
Is all that he did.
Here's what I will say about that. And look, I'm guilty of watching the kickers more than I normally would have because I've got a kid who's a kicker. But I will say that Bryan is more accurate than
Harrison Leonard.
Than the current
kicker.
Than Dorr. Because Harrison Leonard never got reps when we were there. It was always just the 2 of them.
Right.
His leg isn't as strong as Dorr's, but he's more accurate. And his ball trajectory goes kind of more high, but he's more accurate. And I think he will be a more consistent kicker. He may not be kicking a bunch of 55-yarders, but I think he's going to be more consistent. So I think they're going to be fine in the kick game, personally. Yeah. So we'll see what happens.
We shall see. We shall see.
Yeah.
And I think that's a great place to end it with Brian Hazen. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell. We will be back tomorrow with another podcast, and we are going to do a Christmas Eve Irish Breakdown podcast. We will not do a show on Christmas Day. We will put a show out that we have recorded if you want to watch it. But we will not do a live Christmas Day show because that is where I draw the line. I am going to spend Christmas Day with my wife and my dogs, and we're going to relax. And Vince is going to be Vince McScrooge is going to not let his kids open presents when they wake up because he has to make them dinner, and he's going to be that guy. But we're gonna have some fun this week. A lot more breakdowns to go. lot more going on the website. So got a lot more articles. I got my midweek musings coming out where I put sort of some different playoff scenarios on there. I talk about the transfer portal and all that kind of stuff. So ton going on at irishbreakdown.com. Make sure you check that out. And of course, anytime I get intel, it goes on the message board. You can sign up for that at boards@irishbreakdown.com. So we did not address the Tyler Buckner transfer portal thing. I know Corey D just said, thank you guys. Thank you, Corey. We saw you guys talking about that. We're going to address that after the season. Okay. About why we think what we think about the quarterback position, why Notre Dame isn't necessarily looking for a starter in the portal. And we'll discuss it. We'll kind of dive into that as well. And then Katie Keever says show topic tomorrow. Katie, we haven't actually decided that yet. We're going to have some sort of Notre Dame Oklahoma State breakdown. But with the mailbag coming up, we're not sure if we want to do like the stacking ups now or if we want to wait to do those next week. We'll have some sort of Oklahoma State breakdown tomorrow, but there's a couple other topics kind of going. So we were thinking about maybe doing like a show where we address a few different topics.
Yep.
But we'll definitely have some Oklahoma State. I was kind of thinking doing something like play like a matchups. We're talking about maybe some matchups to watch and just kind of get into individual players, then dive into some things. And we also want to make sure there's a lot of Q&A time. And hopefully tomorrow we can stick to questions a little bit more to football. And we went off the rails on mullets and COVID and all this other kind of stuff.
Yes,
today was a little bit nuts. But anyways, a lot of fun. So Katie, be with us tomorrow. And I see she's got a baby, so we got to get Katie down on the fact that we have Gap Closer onesies in the merch store. You know what's funny, Vince? Up until about a week ago, we sold a lot of hats the last week in the merch store. Those are now the kind of the lead item. But up until about the 17th, the most sold item we had in the merch store in the month of December was onesies.
No kidding.
Irish Breakdown onesies.
Shut
we sold
up.
like 13 of them.
That's
I'm dead
hilarious.
serious. I told Angela that.
That's great.
So I just thought that was so cool because not only do we want to have, like, do people in our chat want to have Irish Breakdown gear, they're getting it for their babies. So we're raising future generations
That's right.
of Irish Breakdown people, which I think is totally awesome. And so it's been fun. And if you are a member of Irish Breakdown, the premium site, and you are wanting to buy merch gear up until the end of the day on 31st, we do have a Christmas special, 25% off your entire purchase. So if you don't, you either email me or go on the message board and we have the promo code there. So if you're a subscriber, and if you're not a subscriber and you want to become a subscriber, do so, because I will not only give you the 25% special that you can use between now and New Year's, but also you'll get your 20% off that you can use anytime for a year membership down the road, or your 10% off one purchase that you can use after New Year's as well. So you can use it now, but you might as well use the 25% now and then use the other one later, because that one doesn't expire. So a lot going on, a lot in the merch store, a lot going on the message board, a lot going on the site, a lot going on in Vince's family, because he's got 5 kids. He's got to shop and wrap presents for
my wife. Shopping to do today.
We had the wrapping talk the other day, and so we bought a bunch of bags, and we're just going to put stuff in bags.
I'm a huge fan of bags. Don't get me wrong, because I'm wrapping usually Christmas Eve. So
I'm the worst wrapper too. Like I use so much more paper than I should, and I can't get like the real neat like folds.
I'm a good wrapper.
Then I'm gonna have you come over later and have you wrap all my presents. Okay, be great. Little bonus in there for you. Yeah. So there you go. I was that guy that when I used to do Christmas shopping at the mall, I would
ask if they wrap.
Here you go, wrap this. And Angela always knew if I did that or not, because if it was nicely wrapped, she knew that I paid for it to be done. If it was a hot mess, she would know that I wrapped it.
It was a love.
Hey, can you just mess up one of the sides a little bit so my wife thinks that I actually did this? Thank you. That looks way too nice for her to believe that I'm the one that did that. So anyway, all right, everybody, have a great day. Thanks for joining the Irish Breakdown podcast. We will talk to you again tomorrow.